what do you think an anti-imperialist left should think about the Islamic Republic of Iran? Um, or is this a bit of an abstract question and problem that is uh, potentially used to trap us into this type of narrative that says, oh, given that they maybe haven't got such a progressive way of thinking about, the interaction between individuals, or at least the way that us as Westerns perceive it to be the correct way, then is the way to ultimately say that we are doing this for the sake of extending freedom, and therefore being trapped again into this idea of yes, some sort of rationale behind the war. I'm not sure if I managed to express myself correctly, but hopefully I did.
No, no, that's great. It's a very important question and an extremely relevant question, because all of us are trying to develop anti-war movements in the West, and we're trying to mobilize the maximum number of people and the greatest power of movement that we can against this war. And if we can mobilize millions of people, then we can have an impact. We can be at least one factor, one variable in making this war non-viable, untenable for the ruling classes, and that's what we should be attempting to do. And again, we can bring in Parenti, right? I think this is something that Parenti understood extremely well. The importance of building an anti-war movement, like that as our primary responsibility, and secondly, the role that the propaganda war plays in preventing the construction of an anti-war movement, right? The ruling class makes use of its cultural hegemony, to bring in Gramsci as well, which I'm sure your listeners will be only too familiar with, in order to create this massive wall of a propaganda war, which functions as war propaganda. People might be against war, they might not want to bomb Iran, but are they going to actively oppose it? Are they going to come out onto the streets? Are they going to go on strike? Are they going to refuse to send munitions to the region? Are they going to campaign for closing down of military bases in the Persian Gulf and so on and so forth? When they think, oh, well, Iran is a reactionary, it's a theocracy, it's not democratic, women have a terrible time, it's very backward. People, ordinary people's view of Iran isn't that it's a modern, pro-Palestine, science and future-oriented religious state. Their view of it is it's basically like if it was run by Al-Qaeda or ISIS or something. People have a completely, frankly, racist and Orientalist and Islamophobic view of what Iran is all about. And if you look at Parenti's book on Yugoslavia, To Kill a Nation, it's really indispensable for understanding this deep process of demonization, where you create a narrative that this country, the target country, the subject country, is a rogue state. It's a threat to the world. It's a menace to its neighbors. It's a threat to its own people. It's an enemy of liberty. It's an enemy of freedom. It's an enemy of everything we stand for. That's a technique that we've seen in relation to the Soviet Union. We saw it in relation to Libya. It wasn't that long ago, 2011, that Libya was being painted as this rogue state, as this terroristic, backward, crazy place. There was never any mention of the fact that, it was literally the most developed country in Africa, the country with the highest human development index in all of Africa, with a very high standard of living, with free healthcare for all of its people, with free education for all of its people, a strong social safety net. Its oil profits went towards supporting its people. It was a supporter of African unity. It was, worked very closely with South Africa, with Nicaragua, with Venezuela. It was developing a gold dinar to challenge the dollar. It gave important support to the anti-apartheid struggle, to other liberation movements. As Nelson Mandela famously said, Libya's done a lot for us. Libya did a lot for our struggle against the apartheid system. And anyone who has got something to say about our friend Gaddafi, or who doesn't like our relationship with him, can go jump in the sea, right? We've had the same type of demonization campaign against Syria under Bashar al-Assad. We had the same type of demonization campaign against Cuba. So it's about time that people came to understood this and came to understood the relationship between, as I say, propaganda war and war propaganda that's designed to buy public support for these attacks, or if not active support, then at least a passive acceptance of these types of wars. What can we say about Iran, actually? Iran is first thing to say, and it's a very important thing, especially in this moment where there's a genocide been going on in Gaza for nearly 2.5 years. Iran is the world's leading state supporter of Palestinian resistance, of Palestinian national rights. Iran for decades has been providing weapons, money, logistical support, diplomatic support to the people of Palestine struggling against apartheid and occupation, and now against genocide. And before the Islamic Republic of Iran was established in 1979, under the dictatorship of the Shah, Iran was an ally of Israel, okay? From 1979, it's been the staunchest supporter of the Palestinian cause. Iran is a supporter of liberation struggles worldwide. I mentioned already its support for Ireland, its support for South Africa. Again, under the Shah, and under the dictatorship between 1953, when the British and American security services overthrew the government of Mohammad Mossadegh, and 1979, with the revolution, Iran was a close ally of apartheid South Africa. From 1979, the Iranian government severed relations with the apartheid regime and provided important support for the liberation struggle. Iran is a country with economic sovereignty. Again, before 1979, Iran's natural wealth was concentrated in the hands of a few, and its resources were placed at the service of foreign multinationals. Whereas Iran now, it's got a hybrid economy, partly publicly owned, partly privately owned, but its natural wealth is maintained under public ownership, and these revenues are used for the benefit of the people. And as I say, that includes some of the best social welfare in the world, some of the best education in the world, some of the best healthcare in the world. Iran is, completely and closely integrated into the multipolar camp. It's, as I mentioned before, it's a crucial link in the Belt and Road Initiative, right at the core of Eurasia. It's a member of BRICS as of the last couple of years. It's a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as of the last couple of years. Extremely close working relationship with China, with Russia, with Venezuela, with Cuba. Really all countries that are opposed to this US-led imperialist order. And it's a religious state, I think people sort of have to get over it. I mean, I'm not a religious person. I'm a Marxist. But the fact is that Iran's religious foundations in radical Shiism are essentially progressive. And you're talking about a regime that's very modern, which is very focused on science. It's certainly not obscurantist in any way whatsoever. As I mentioned before, women's literacy rate was about 30% under the Shah. Now it's 99%. Women constitute 60% of university students. They constitute 40% of doctors in the country. They constitute 70% of science and technology graduates, right? So these are not indicators of a deeply backward obscurantist society, right? All of the healthcare and education indicators are very strong. And, you can compare all of that with other countries in the region. You can compare all of that with, for example, Saudi Arabia. So yeah, as I say, I don't share the governing ideology as such, but the revolution, the Islamic revolution, has transformed the country for the better, and that's why it's hated in the West. And so the position for anti-imperialists is clear. We must understand Iran and we must defend Iran.